After 10 long years, the My Hero Academia manga has finally come to a close, and the ending is nothing less than controversial, at least in the online sphere. Once I read the chapter myself, I thought, people really don't like this? So in this video, I'm gonna explain why My Hero Academia's ending is actually a perfect conclusion to the series. Spoilers for the entire series ahead, obviously, so if you haven't read the final chapter yet, you may want to skip this video for now. While there was a lot packed into the final chapter, most of the complaints fall on how Deku's story ended specifically. It seems like most people are mad that he became a teacher at UA, where he could inspire and teach others who are striving to be heroes? Let's back up even more. The root of that complaint is that Deku let go of One For All and didn't end up becoming a hero alongside the rest of Class 1A, thus not fulfilling the greatest hero of all time spiel from the start of the series. Now, we know that he gets the Iron Might suit at the very end and does get to be a hero again, but I don't think anything about the resolution of his story is bad. Him becoming a teacher actually makes a lot of sense narratively. For example, in the prior chapter, Hawks talked to All Might about recognizing other types of heroes in society, not just the pros with fancy quirks who end up on the billboard charts. An over-reliance on those heroes is exactly what led to the events of the main series. Society left everything to the heroes and virtually had no stakes in anything since they didn't really have to lift a finger. Now, with heroes being more than just the pros, you see a downturn in villains. It also fundamentally changes the in-universe definition of a hero, because now it could genuinely be anyone, not just someone with a flashy quirk. Which means that even Deku, someone who is now quirkless yet again, can still become a hero. His students look up to him and admire him, not because of his quirk, but because of who he is as a person. I would also argue that it wasn't Deku's quirk that saved people, it was his heart. Did his quirk physically save people? Absolutely, but it also enabled him to reach more people and change their lives in the process. Kids like Kota and Eri, who had their lives changed and are now striving to be heroes like Deku, or Gentle and Labrava, who turned from a path of villainy and now lead honest, normal lives, all because Deku inspired them to change with his kindness and actions. Even Shigaraki, One For All connected the two of them, but it was Deku's genuine compassion that actually saved Tenko. I should also point out, Deku never wanted to be the #1 hero. He wanted to save people, just like All Might, so him becoming a teacher at UA after letting go of One For All makes sense. It's a practical way for him to keep doing those things even without a quirk. He also never said he became the #1 hero. He said this was the story of how he became the greatest hero, which drives home the idea that being a hero is a lot more than just the billboard pros. Okay, let's jump back to his post-UA life. The complaint is that 1. He gave up on being a hero, 2. Stopped hanging out with Class 1A, 3. Has no recognition for his feats, and 4. Didn't end up with Uraraka. Let me break each one of those down one at a time. First, he did not give up on being a hero. He knew his goal as a hero, more specifically his time with One For All, was over. He accomplished what he set out to do and moved into the next phase of his life. As I've said so many times now, being a hero doesn't immediately mean a pro with a quirk, and if you missed that part of the series, I don't know what to tell you. The same people who say that Deku should have used support items to fight alongside 1A are the same ones who are mad that he got the Iron Might suit 8 years later and did just that. Make it make sense, please. Speaking of which, people are mad that he's back to hero work again since it was a handout from his friends who had pity on him. Never was this meant or implied to be the case. It's pretty clear that 1A all pitched in so that Deku could join them again. You don't raise potentially millions of dollars for someone to hang out with you just because you pity them. It also definitely took 1A all 8 of those years to raise the money for that suit since it's real expensive. I'll loop back to 1A in a second. I personally think it's really cool that Deku has the Iron Might suit, and it's a great way to parallel the first chapter where All Might gave him One For All, and as Volk put it on Twitter, a subtle way to revive One For All, and even a positive spin on All For One since everyone pitched in for the sake of Deku. Could he have become a hero without it? Sure, but that's clearly not what Deku wanted. The chapter is pretty vague with his transition from student to teacher, but it's clear that he didn't give up. Honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of Deku losing One For All at first, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. One for All was never meant to be kept, hence why it kept being passed on. Yoichi's wish was that it would one day be strong enough to defeat All for One, which Deku was able to do as the 9th holder. That's what it meant to complete One for All, not merging One for All and All for One and keeping it, but fulfilling that wish Yoichi passed down to each holder. If Deku held on to One for All and refused to let it go, he'd be no better than All for One, who spent years, even decades, doing just that. Make no mistake, Deku did not want to part with One for All. He was hesitant when the past holders suggested it, but he ultimately made that sacrifice for the greater good of society and to save Tenko, which is completely in character since he's always been a selfless person. One for All literally means an individual who acts for the benefit of the group, which is exactly what Deku did during the final battle and letting go of One for All. This also continues as he uses up his limited embers just to reach Uraraka quicker since he knew she wasn't okay. When Deku let go of One for All, he was at peace with it. He willingly let go because he knew he had fulfilled its purpose, even though that meant his time as a hero was over. He even says in the chapter, "I'd be lying if I claimed I didn't miss it all, but as long as I can still inspire and encourage others, then I'd say this is the tale of how we became great heroes." He is content in his life as a teacher since he still gets to do everything he wants to, which is inspiring others to be great heroes. He can simultaneously be content with his current life while also feeling nostalgic about his time as a hero with One for All. Now onto the second point. Deku stopped hanging out with Class 1A after graduation and they ditched him to be pros. This is actually a really easy one to debunk if you read the chapter. Yet again, Deku says that since they all started working, it's been hard for them to meet up since everyone is so busy, and trying to line up 20 people's schedules can definitely be a hassle. This is very realistic to how life goes post-high school and college, and it's something even I've dealt with. After graduating high school, I still kept up with my friends, but as more time went on, it eventually went from texting and group chats to just seeing how their life is going through social media, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. A very similar thing happened when I was in college. I had a big group of friends who I hung out with while we were all in school, but then post-graduation, we all went our separate ways for work. We still chat on Instagram and Discord, and I even play D&D with them, but sometimes it is hard to hang out since we're all adults now. In Deku's case, Class 1A clearly didn't abandon him for 8 years. I'm sure there's lots of interactions that just didn't make it into the manga because they were just the usual chats between friends. Not to mention the fact that they all saved up and bought Deku a super suit. They were on that grind, man. You don't save the world with your high school class, then go back and finish school, and then ghost each other. They definitely stayed in contact and kept up with each other. Saying Class 1A ditched Deku because he was quirkless and not a hero also goes against the whole message presented during their fight in the Dark Hero arc. 1A all committed to walking alongside Deku and helping share his burdens, including him being quirkless again. Now, do I wish Horikoshi showed us that in the chapter? Sure, but I also understand why he chose to leave it out since that would have taken up extra time that he didn't necessarily have. Maybe something will get included in the Volume 42 extras, who's to say? Alright, point number 3. He got no recognition for his efforts during the war and kinda became a nobody. This one is really easy to disprove. When Dai is monologuing to himself after school, he talks about how all his friends wanted to be like Deku, Great Explosion, Murder God Dynamite, and Shoto. A couple of pages later, we can see a statue of 1A in the background that includes Deku. And finally, when Dai runs into Deku, he starts freaking out at meeting him in person. With those really blatant ones out of the way, it's fairly obvious that Deku's work hasn't gone unnoticed. Like I said earlier, the goal was never for Deku to become a pillar or a symbol like All Might. He inspired change on a societal level, which is shown when the granny reaches out to the Scissormouth kid in chapter 429. That's his recognition. No flashy gadgets or riches, but the satisfaction of knowing that thanks to his efforts, another case like Shigaraki won't happen again, or at least it'll be a lot less likely. It also makes sense for his character. Deku isn't like the pro heroes who were just clout chasing. He genuinely wanted to help people and make the world a better place, which is exactly what happened. I can also guarantee you that all of his students knew exactly who he was, just like 1A geeked out over having All Might as their teacher. And thus, we have now reached the fourth and final gripe: Deku didn't end up with Uraraka. As a hardcore Izuocha fan, I'm obviously a little biased here, but I think the misconception is that there was no explicit scene of them dating, which means they never got together, which I don't think is true at all. It seems like Horikoshi left it up for our own interpretation, seemingly soft confirming it in chapter 429, then giving a brief panel in the final chapter while also having her look at him on the final page. Saying they didn't end up together is a wild take, especially after taking in the full context of the series and the entirety of chapter 429. I think Horikoshi leaving it vague is fine. Maybe they didn't end up together while at UA and have a will they won't they as adults, or are dating behind the scenes and it just wasn't shown, but I don't think any of that equates to them never ending up together ever. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I want to share some of my brief thoughts on the ending as a whole, specifically the last 5 to 6 chapters. I got to react to the entire epilogue live on stream, which is great because I'll have those moments saved forever and be able to look back on it later. Overall, I feel like Horikoshi was able to wrap things up neatly and in a concise 5 chapters, which is above average for a Shonen Jump series, by the way. For example, Demon Slayer only has 2 epilogue chapters, arguably only 1, you know what I mean if you've read it, and Fullmetal Alchemist only has 1 chapter for its epilogue, so for Horikoshi to get 5 is pretty incredible. I like seeing how things wrap up with all the characters instead of just, oop, final battle is over, 30 seconds to wrap up, and it's over. The fact that Horikoshi not only took the time to wrap everything up, but also show us what everyone is up to post-UA made me really happy. There's a part of me that feels like it may have been rushed, and that Horikoshi wanted to flesh it out even more since that's just his style of writing. Maybe he'll expand on it a bit more in the Volume 42 extras since he apparently has a lot of space to fill. I don't think there's much more that I personally would have wanted from this ending, aside from maybe a solid Izuocha confirmation. I feel like everything truly was wrapped up well and the story came to its natural conclusion. Do I hope we get a sequel series down the line? Of course I do. I want to see Pro Deku with his new suit in action and even more of what this post-League of Villains world looks like. I also feel like there's a lot of potential for anime original movies that fill in some of the 8-year gap. Like, there's a whole cyber war that Gentle and LaBrava were a part of that we know nothing about. We didn't even really get to see Class 2A/3A now with Shinso since he came in at the end, so movies could expand upon that or, and I'd say most importantly, Deku's final moments with One for All before letting go of those embers for good. I could also see a world where we get more MHA spin-offs like Vigilantes since there's such an expansive world Horikoshi made and I feel like we've really only scratched the surface. But as for the main MHA series, I'm satisfied with the way things ended and would be completely content if we don't get anything else. One final thing I want to touch on is leak culture and how it actively destroyed My Hero's reputation. First off, leaking manga is illegal in Japan and can actively hurt the creators. I know there are a lot of people who read leaks and pirate chapters in general because they can't afford it, to which I say every new chapter of My Hero, at least during its run, was available for free on the official Shonen Jump app. So not only could you wait until Sundays to read the official chapter, but you could do so legally and for free while supporting the creators. There's also something to say about how leaks can alter your perception of a chapter. This is exactly why I stopped reading the translations of leaks and just glossed over the panels from time to time. A lot of fan translations can be, and have been, wrong or taken out of context, especially when you're rushing to be the first person to share them on Twitter. I don't want to name names, but if you were into MHA leaks on Twitter, you should know exactly who's at fault here. Shoddy translations that turned out to be blatantly false actively ruined the final chapter for people and caused them to build arguments and criticisms around things that didn't actually happen. A lot of the points I brought up earlier in the video are the result of leakers mistranslating the chapter and people reacting to that rather than the official translation. Then people let their opinions be influenced and shaped by the unofficial leaks and refuse to believe anything in the official translation. The larger issue with leaks is that it's not how the original creator intended for you to engage with or consume their story. You're meant to enjoy it with the full official context, especially when it comes to things like manga and anime, which are translated from a completely different language. Long story short, don't read or support leaks. Not only can they ruin your perspective on a series, but they actively harm the creators and the projects they work on. Now that I'm off my soapbox, I'll wrap this video up. I think My Hero's ending was perfect for what it wanted to be and as a conclusion to the series as a whole. I'm also incredibly sad that my favorite series has come to an end. It hasn't entirely hit me yet since there's plenty of anime content to come, but I think once the anime ends, it'll hit me full force. My Hero Academia changed my life, and for that I am eternally grateful. I'm actually working on a video that expands that idea and goes a lot deeper, so I hope you'll stick around for that. In the meantime, you can check out one of the two videos on screen since I can guarantee you that they are both solid bangers.